Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Om Srimad Paramhamsa Pariprajukacharya Ashtottara Sri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Sridhar Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kundagiri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadip Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Ki Jai, Gangamai Ki Jai, Jamunamai Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.
Hari Hari Bol. Jai Maharaj, thank you. Thank you to Mahesh Pandit Prabhu also. Welcome everyone to Srimad Bhagavatam with His Holiness Jayadvaita Maharaj. Today is Monday, May 1st, and we're reading in the 3rd canto, 16th chapter, titled The Two Doorkeepers of Vaikuntha, Jai and Vijay, Cursed by the Sages. We take it up again with text 28. As always, we're eager to hear everyone's comments and questions, so please use the raise hand feature, or simply unmute yourself and speak when Maharaj asks for questions, or you can type your comments into the chat window. Just remember to not type or send the messages into the chat window while Maharaj is reading something there, because it makes it more difficult to read. And at the end of class, we'll post some links that you can share with your friends so that they can attend as well. And if anyone wants to lead the closing kirtan, please send me a private message in the chat. Maharaj, we're so glad that you could join us all the way from Köln, Germany. And Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Tuti Priya. Thank you, Mahesh Pandit Prabhu. And thank you to all. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavantam parikramya pranipatyanuvanya Pratijagmu pramudita shansanto vaishnavim shriyam. The sages circumambulated the Supreme Lord, offered their obeisances, and returned, extremely delighted at learning of the divine opulences of the Vaishnava. Purport. It is still a respectful practice to circumambulate the Lord in Hindu temples. Especially in Vaishnava temples, there's an arrangement for people to offer their respects to the deity and circumambulate the temple at least 3 times. Om Gana Timidandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Miditam Jaina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Tadhati Shapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jatapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Shagrajatam Shahagana Raganatan Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savatutam Pradijana Setam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Shahagana Lalita Sri Vishakhan Vitanscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hori Priye Vansha Kulpatarupyascha Kripa Sindho Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So the sages circumambulated the Lord, Parikramya. This is an ancient system to offer respect to the Lord or the devotee or those who are something connected to the Lord by circumambulation, going around in a circle, offering respect. Just as an aside, so His Holiness Giriraj Maharaj told me one time that he'd heard from some Hindu people that one shouldn't circumambulate the Lord while the deity doors are closed. And he asked Srila Prabhupada about that. And Prabhupada said, yes, that was correct. The Lord wants to reciprocate with the devotees. So one circumambulates while the doors are open. Okay, any questions or comments here? Okay. Bhagavan Anugavaha Yatama Paishtamashtusham Brahmateja Samartopi Antum Nechche Matam Tume. The Lord then said to his attendants, Jai and Vijay, depart this place, but fear not. All glory is unto you. Though I am capable of nullifying the Brahmin's curse, I would not do so. On the contrary, it has my approval. As explained in connection with text 26, all the incidents that took place had the approval of the Lord. Ordinarily, there's no possibility that the four sages could be so angry with the doorkeepers, nor could the Supreme Lord neglect his two doorkeepers, nor can one come back from Vaikuntha after once taking birth there. All these incidents, therefore, were designed by the Lord himself for the sake of his pastimes in the material world. Thus he plainly says that it was done with his approval. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for inhabitants of Vaikuntha to come back to this material world simply because of a Brahminical curse. The Lord especially blesses the so-called culprits. All glories unto you. A devotee, once accepted by the Lord, can never fall down. That is the conclusion of this incident. So here we find more texts supporting the conclusion that no one can ever fall from Vaikuntha. Both things are stated in Srila Prabhupada's books, that one can never fall and that one falls. So leave here, but don't be afraid. And on the contrary, may there be happiness for you. May there be all good fortune for you. And I could nullify this curse, but I won't do so. The Vishwanath, we talked about this the other day. Can a curse by a Brahmin be nullified? Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary speaks to this point. The Lord said, though I can nullify the curse of the Brahmins, I do not desire to destroy my own promise. I've made a rule to accept the inevitability of a Brahmin's curse. Just as Garuda sacrificed an expansion of his wing in order to maintain the inevitability of the thunderbolt's power, you should take on the role of demons in one of your expansions, and at the same time remain in Vaikuntha in your Swarupas. Well, there's an interesting take on it. First of all, that the Lord doesn't want to nullify the curse issued by a Brahmin. He respects the Brahmin's curse. And then this other point that we hear that in this regard, that a thunderbolt was thrown by Indra against Garuda. So Garuda sacrificed, sometimes we heard some feathers, but here it said sacrificed a wing. And it's explained that means an expansion of his wing. So, but then here that's expanded further, or the point is further elaborated, that the Jai and Vijay should expand themselves to go to the material world. They should expand themselves to go to the material world, so that in your actual forms, you'd at the same time stay in Vaikuntha and go to the material world. And Chakravarti Thakur gives some evidence from Shastras about that. Oh, well, he gives the evidence, let's look at it, that there's a passage in 8th canto where Jai and Vijay are mentioned among associates of Lord Vishnu. And so, yes, in connection with Vamadev and Bali. So they're mentioned among the associates of the Lord who are fighting on behalf of the Lord. But so the explanation of their expansions must be given in order to resolve the contradiction of being simultaneously in the form of demons and associates of the Lord. Okay. Another Sheikh says, in our culture, it is impolite to leave or enter a room without permission. Yes, that word is used, I think, on Amanya in the verse, that we don't just walk in or walk out. We take permission. especially in the presence of a superior, but even among our peers. Take your leave, Hare Krishna. So it seemed polite just to walk in and walk out. So the sages circumambulated the Lord and took permission. Then they left. And thank you for that. Anything else? Comments, questions? Okay.
Maharaj?
Yes.
I'm going to have to listen to this class again because my mind is a little boggled by the idea of them expanding themselves. I understand, I've heard so many times about expansions, but I guess because it's generally in relation to the Lord who is expanding himself, and he's omniscient, so it's not a big deal for him to be in everywhere at once. But for a living entity to do that, I can't. I'm just wondering if you have any extra insight to offer how somebody can be in two places at one time who is not the Lord and live, live their lives or exist, doing their service in two different places, and both diametrically opposed in mood.
First, let's offer a bit evidence that it happens in the incident concerning Bahulashva and who was the other person? King Bahulashva and Shrutudev, thank you. And Shrutudev. This is what happened. The Lord was traveling with a retinue of sages, and the Lord received invitations, one from King Bahulashva and one from a Brahmin, Shrutudev, and the Lord accepted both invitations. Yes, I'll come to your house. Yes, I'll come to your palace. And the sages, to do it, the Lord expanded himself, and the sages also expanded themselves. So everyone expanded to accept the invitation. So these things do happen. Not only the Lord, but even the associates of the Lord can expand themselves. Now, how exactly is it done? What is the technological, what are the technological implications of this? That we may not know. The Lord has his own internal potential technology by which he accomplishes these things, and what it's like to be able to expand into that, we may find out if we're asked or ordained to expand in such a way.
It's also like having a dual consciousness, because you're having to interact with other people in your environment in two different places at this. Well,
presumably, we'll make a few presumptions. Presumably, the various expanded forms have their own individual mentality. So when Krishna's expanded in a particular form, it's not that he has to sort of keep in mind the mentality of the other forms in which he's simultaneously expanded. When he's reciprocating with, say, Nanda Yashoda, he gives full attention to Nanda Yashoda. He doesn't think, yes, but I'd also have to expand as the son of Aditi, as Vamandev. And each individual expansion has its own full mentality. For that matter, Krishna, while he's performing pastimes, at every moment there's another expansion, because he's appearing in all the various material worlds, performing all these activities simultaneously. So we don't want to speculate on how he does it and what he thinks while he's doing it. But it appears that each individual expansion is separately constituted, separately and yet, or let's say individually constituted, even though they're all one. These things we'll figure out or not figure out.
Thank you.
Thank you. Andrew says, don't we also hear that devotees like Nanda and Yashoda have their expansions as Drona and Tara, and also simultaneously exist in the material and spiritual worlds? Yes, we hear that. We also hear that the associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu have their places in Krishna Lila. So they're doing more than one thing at once. So this is the spiritual platform, quite beyond our experience. And Anantashesh says, I believe we have to totally obliterate our understanding of physical laws and reality, and the reality that we see, to understand the Lord's pastimes. Yes, that's for sure. These things are not going on within the jurisdiction of the laws of nature, as we know them, the physical laws and reality. Yes, absolutely true. Anything else? Okay. Etat puraiva nirdishtam ramaya krudaya yada pura pavarita dwari vishanti mayuparate. This departure from Vaikuntha was foretold by Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune. She was very angry because when she left my abode and then returned, you stopped her at the gate while I was sleeping. Interestingly, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments, though this verse is seen in many editions, it has no commentary because it's not traditionally accepted as a verse. We see that many times, or from time to time. Srila Prabhupada will say, in some editions, this additional verse is found. There are a few places in Bhagavatam where he says that. So that's the nature of these texts. Sometimes there's an additional verse, or sometimes there's a verse that's accepted by some commentators, not accepted by others, or it appears in some editions and not in others. The essential meaning of the text is not deflected. Okay. And Saraswati says, in the multiple expansions of liberated souls, is the multiple expansions of liberated souls similar to that of a perfect yogi that can expand to a maximum of 9 forms? Well, there's the immediate similarity that they're expansions. So in that sense, there's a resemblance. Whether the same restriction, the same constraint is imposed on these forms is another question. The yogis achieve their perfection of being able to expand by dint of their austerities and their yoga teja, whereas the devotees here, like the sages, attain their ability to expand by the will of the Lord. So, to what extent the two kinds of expansions are similar or identical, we can't say, but certainly it's certainly possible that these expansions are different because they're coming from a different channel. You could say one is by yoga practice and one is by the direct will of the Lord. Also, it seems Jai and Vijay have a tendency to go overboard with screening and stopping others, including Lakshmi, from entering, and didn't learn from this incident where they angered Lakshmi, because they repeat the same behavior with the Kumaras. It was a surprise to learn that a consort like Lakshmi needs permission from the gatekeepers. Yeah, so this could be explained two ways. One is that, well, we just don't accept this verse. It's there in some editions, but not in others. Or that these things happen by the will of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada explained in the previous purport that so many things happen that one wouldn't expect. One wouldn't expect the doorkeepers to stop the sages. One wouldn't expect the sages to get angry and curse the doorkeepers. We wouldn't expect the Jai and Vijay to fall from Vaikuntha. All of these unexpected things happened by the will of the Lord. Otherwise, these things wouldn't occur. So similarly, if the doorkeepers insulted Lakshmi, but then didn't learn from the incident, that can happen under the same power of Yogamaya and the Lord's desire. Okay, anything else? Mai sangrambha yogena nistirya brahmahelanam ratyeshitam ikasham me kalena alpi yasa punaha. The Lord assured the two Vaikuntha inhabitants, Jai and Vijay, by practicing the mystic yoga system in anger, you will be cleansed of the sin of disobeying the Brahmins, and within a very short time, return to me. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead advised the two doorkeepers, Jai and Vijay, that by dint of bhakti yoga in anger, they would be delivered from the curses of the Brahmins. Srila Madhva Muni remarks in this connection that by practicing bhakti yoga, one can become free from all sinful reactions. Even a Brahma shap, or curse by a Brahmin, which cannot be overcome by any other means, can be overcome by bhakti yoga. So we're getting another comment on the counteraction of a Brahmin's curse. It can be overcome by bhakti yoga. One can practice bhakti yoga in many rasas. There are 12 rasas, 5 primary and 7 secondary. The 5 primary rasas constitute direct bhakti yoga. But although the 7 secondary rasas are indirect, they're also counted within bhakti yoga if they're used in the service of the Lord. In other words, bhakti yoga is all-inclusive. If one somehow or other becomes attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he becomes engaged in bhakti yoga, as described in Srimad Bhagavatam 10:29-15. Kamam krodham bhayam. The gopis were attracted to Krishna by bhakti yoga in a relationship of lusty desire, kama. Similarly, Kamsa was attached to bhakti yoga by dint of fear of his death. Thus, bhakti yoga is so powerful that even becoming an enemy of the Lord and always thinking of him can deliver one very quickly. It is said, Vishnu bhakta smrito daiva asras tad viparyayaho. Devotees of the Lord are called demigods, whereas non-devotees are called asuras. But bhakti yoga is so powerful that both demigods and asuras can derive its benefits if they always think of the personality of Godhead. The basic principle of bhakti yoga is to think of the Supreme Lord always. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita, Manmana bhavamad bhakta, always think of me. It doesn't matter which way one thinks. The very thought of the personality of Godhead is the basic principle of bhakti yoga. Yes, there are different kinds of service that are counted. And here, one of the ways of serving the Lord, one can serve in anger. We find a parallel incident in regard to the Shamantaka jewel history, where Jambavan fights against Krishna. And when Krishna seeks out the jewel and traces it to Jambavan's cave, and then Jambavan comes and there's a fight. The Jambavan was the most powerful person, and he'd been an associate of Lord Ramchandra. So while fighting against the Lord, the fighting was going on as if between equals, and it went on for days and days and days. And then Jambavan was tiring out, and he thought, what's this? Who can fight with me like this? And then he understood, oh, it must be my master, Lord Ramchandra. No one else would have this kind of power. Then he understood, oh, this is the Lord. And the comment given is that he was able to have this realization, because he was serving the Lord, because the Lord was pleased by his service. Dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mahapiyantite. By fighting the Lord, he pleased the Lord. And so he got that realization. So here, service to the Lord is counted. You'll be angry, but you'll be thinking of me, and that's also a kind of service, serving me in anger. In Srila Rupa Goswami's famous definition, we find Anukuliyena Krishna Nashilana. Devotional service is service performed favorably, anukul. But here also we find that Kamsa or Jai and Vijay in their demonic forms also serve the Lord. And so that's counted in this context as bhakti yoga. In the material planets, there are different grades of sinful activities, of which disrespecting a Brahmin or a Vaishnav is the most sinful. Here it is clearly stated that one can overcome even that grave sin simply by thinking of Vishnu, not even favorably, but in anger. Thus, even if those who are not devotees always think of Vishnu, they become free from all sinful activities. Krishna consciousness is the highest form of thought. Lord Vishnu is thought of in this age by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. From the statements of the Bhagavatam, it appears that if one thinks of Krishna, even as an enemy, that particular qualification, thinking of Vishnu or Krishna, cleanses one of all sins. We see that repeatedly with the demons killed by Krishna. The Putana witch was a sadhvi, duplicitous, and approaching Krishna with the attempt to kill him. But she was somehow approaching Krishna, so Krishna accepted her approach as service. So similarly, here, the angry assaults of Jaya and Vijay in their mood of thinking of Krishna as enemies is accepted as service by the Lord. Saraswati, I thought the gopis were attracted to Krishna in the Madhurya, Prema Rasa, not Kama, and that Kubja was attracted by Kama. Yes, that's stated, but the Bhagavatam says, Kama Krodha Bhaya Dveshat. Kama means desire. So they were attracted by desire. Krishna was a young boy, they were young girls. They were attracted with desire to associate with Krishna. So that's also called Kama, although technically not. What is that? Atmendriya Priti Vansha Taribali Kam. Kaviraj Goswami says the desire for one's own sense gratification is called Kam. Krishnendriya Priti Vansha Dhari Premana, and the desire to satisfy Krishna's senses is called Prema. So the gopis certainly had no interest in their own sense gratification. Their only desire was to be as Krishna. But sometimes that desire is also called Kama. In the more precise analysis, there's Kama and there's Prema. But in a more general sense, the attraction of the gopis for Krishna, to Krishna, was Kama. It was, the basis of it was a desire to associate with Krishna. Okay. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explicitly says, by meditating on me in anger, you'll overcome the curse of the Kumaras. And Srila Prabhupada sort of goes further in explaining these points, making them intelligible. How one serves the Lord, even if indirectly, through anger or whatever it may be. And that simply by thinking of Krishna, the demons like Kamsa become purified, become fortunate. They serve the Lord. And in the general, in the overall context of the pastime, we understand this was Krishna's desire. He wanted to fight, so Jaya and Vijay became his opponents. Vastav Adisha Bhagavan Imana Shreni Bhushanam Sarvatishaya Lakshmiya Jushtam Swamintishnama Vishat. After thus speaking at the door of Vaikuntha, the Lord returned to his abode, where there are many celestial airplanes, and all surpassing wealth and splendor. Purport: it is clear from this verse that all the incidents took place at the entrance of Vaikuntha Loka. In other words, the sages were not actually within Vaikuntha Loka, but were at the gate. It could be asked, how could they return to the material world if they entered Vaikuntha Loka? But actually, they did not enter, and therefore they returned. There are many similar incidents where great yogis and brahmanas, by dint of their yoga practice, have gone to the material from this material world to Vaikuntha Loka, but they were not meant to stay there. They came back. It is also confirmed here that the Lord was surrounded by many Vaikuntha airplanes. Vaikuntha Loka is described here as having splendid opulence, far surpassing the splendor of this material world. Here's another explanation for the somewhat contradictory, or for the contradictions that seem to appear in this pastime. The Kumars become angry even though they've gone to Vaikuntha. The Jai and Vijay fall even from Vaikuntha. And the adjustment is offered that, well, they weren't actually in Vaikuntha. They were at the gates. So the Vaikuntha rules don't apply. The Jai and Vijay didn't fall from Vaikuntha. They fell from just outside at the gates. And the Kumars didn't become angry in Vaikuntha. They also were at the gates. Also, Srila Prabhupada mentions here that they're extending a bit what he said. There's more than one way of going to Vaikuntha. One may go to stay as a permanent resident of Vaikuntha, or one may go briefly under some other circumstance. And the example given is Durvasa Muni, who went to Vaikuntha. Not the example is not given here, but elsewhere. Durvasa Muni went to Vaikuntha, but he wasn't meant to stay there, so he got essentially a visitor's pass. He was able to go to Vaikuntha, but he had to come back because he didn't go with permission to be a permanent resident. Now, Bean says, for the sake of negating the grave sin, Jai and Vijay had to commit so many sins in these 3 lifetimes. Is it then that when a pure devotee commits some sinful activities, one should see it as the plan of the Lord? That may be. Of course, a pure devotee, from one angle of vision, never commits sinful activities. But even if we see sinful activities, apparently sinful activities, in the life of a pure devotee, we can take it as the plan of the Lord. Parikshit Maharaj insulted Shamak Rishi by garlanding him with a snake. And that's certainly not something the king would have done. He was a cultured Vedic king. He would never have insulted a Brahmin that way. But he did it because it was the Lord's desire that such a thing would happen, so that the Bhagavatam could be spoken. So yes, sometimes such things happen in the life of a pure devotee by Krishna's desire, or as part of Krishna's plan. We should be careful not to use that as a sort of blank check for buying into the idea that whatever a devotee does is beyond reproach, that one can do any kind of nonsense and still be well situated. The sahajas are devotees in a certain way, and they perform all kinds of sinful activities in the name of devotional service. It's not that such things are the plan of the Lord. They're violation of the plan of the Lord or the desire of the Lord. So we should be careful. And certainly we shouldn't justify our own sinful activities that way. Yeah, I did that, but it was all Krishna's plan, Prabhu. That's cheating. What is that in the Bhagavatam? I'm forgetting the verse, but the devotee is beyond duplicity. There's no dharma approach to great devotion that we can say. There's no cheating in the Bhagavatam. So the pure devotee doesn't cheat, or we shouldn't cheat, that if we deviate from our prescribed duties, it must be the plan of the Lord. It's our own obstinacy or our own weakness. We shouldn't pin that to Krishna's plan.
All right.
Yes.
I had a question. If you were continuing the same line of thought, I can wait.
No, I'm not continuing the same line of thought.
I just wanted to know if, like, when you're bringing up the idea that Jai and Vijay weren't in Vaikuntha, I'm presuming that they were residents of Vaikuntha, or is that incorrect?
That's the point that's made in the purport, that they weren't in Vaikuntha. They weren't Vaikuntha residents. They were doorkeepers. Just like, you have a big estate, say in India, and there's a chowkidar at the gate. There's a doorkeeper, but he doesn't live in the house. He's the doorkeeper.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So the Lord is described as having splendid opulence beyond the splendor of the material world. All other living creatures, including the demigods, are born of Brahma, and Brahma is born of Lord Vishnu. Krishna states in Bhagavad Gita, in the 10th chapter, Aham Sarvasya Prabhava. Lord Vishnu is the origin of all manifestations in the material world. Those who know that Lord Vishnu is the origin of everything, who are conversant with the process of creation, and who understand that Vishnu, or Krishna, is the most worshipable object of all living entities, engage themselves in Vishnu worship as Vaishnavas. The Vedic hymns also confirm this. Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam. The goal of life is to understand Vishnu. The Bhagavatam also confirms this elsewhere. Foolish people, not knowing that Vishnu is the supreme worshipable object, create so many objects, worshipable objects, in this material world, and therefore they fall down. I'm just looking to see. Yeah, this appears to be a further comment on Sarva Adishayaya Lakshmiya, opulent in all respects. He has the first-class airplanes of Vaikuntha manifest the opulence of the Lord. The splendor of the Lord's abode manifests the opulence of the Lord. Even the opulences, the splendid things of this material world, manifest the opulence of the Lord. And all living beings manifest the opulence of the Lord because they're expansions of Brahma, or they're created by Brahma, who's created by Lord Vishnu. So Lord Vishnu is the origin of everything. Aham Sarvasya Prabhuvo. And he is therefore the person to be worshipped. Yes, our attention should not be diverted to anyone else. Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Padam. Something else? Sorry, Saraswati says, but I thought that the gatekeepers live in Vaikuntha and are an official resident, but their duty is as gatekeeper, so they are permanent residents. Well, yeah, we have to, now the courts are going to sort through the papers and find out whether Jai and Vijay are permanent residents or actual citizens, or whether they only have a tourist visa, or what's going on. But this is an angle of vision. When there are statements in Shastra that are of particular interest, the acharyas comment from different angles of vision. Krishna closed his eyes because he didn't want to kill a woman. Krishna closed his eyes because he was confident that she's a nurse, there's not a problem. Krishna's closed his eyes because he didn't want to see this nasty witch. Krishna closed his eyes, on and on it goes, different reasons given for why Krishna closed his eyes when on the lap of Putana witch. So when there are incidents in Srimad Bhagavatam that invite comment, the commentators speak from different angles of vision. And sometimes their points of view are in apparent conflict. One commentator says something and another commentator says the opposite. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that we shouldn't be disturbed by such apparent contradictions. He calls these all-loving controversies among the devotees or acharyas. So from one angle of vision, it's proven that one never falls down from Vaikuntha. From another angle of vision, this is evidence of how one falls from Vaikuntha. From one angle of vision, these were Vaikuntha residents. From another angle of vision, no, they were just doorkeepers. They weren't actually residents because they couldn't fall if they were residents. So these are all different ways of looking at things. And devotees sometimes become confused or perplexed when they read contradictory statements in the Bhagavatam, because Shastra is not contradictory. How could there be contradictions? On page such and such it says this, on page such and such it says the opposite. But the experienced devotees recognize that different ways of seeing the same thing are possible amongst pure devotees, that learned acharyas can have different takes on things, different angles of vision. and we don't need to be even to take sides to give a final verdict. This is true, and therefore that's not true. This is true, and that's also true. Okay. Anything else on that? Okay, we can stop here. Anantashesh says we can't box in anything related to Krishna when he's infinite. Yes, quite right. Quite right. All right. Time for kirtan. Anantashesh, do you want to lead kirtan? You never lead kirtan. Here.
I have some voice issues with my vocal cord.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anantashesh, for being bold by calling on people we don't usually hear from. I don't have the.
I think I had asked Sadhuseva Prabhu previously if he wanted to lead. He might be ready now if he wants to. Sorry, Maharaj, whoever you want to ask, I was just
No, Sadhuseva is fine. Whoever might like to volunteer is welcome. We're a welcoming, non-critical community here. Anyone who wants to chant Hare Krishna will be welcome. Okay. Krishna volunteer.
You've heard Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Can't reach the corner.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Send it. Anyways.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Now I've got it.
Rama Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pariprajaka Stotra Satatri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Ki Jai, Nam Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Names Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadip Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Ki Jai, Kamdamai Ki Jai, Jamnamai Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari. Thank you, Krishna Kantiya Prabhu. And thank you to all. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you, Mahesh Pandit.
Thank you,
Prabhu.
Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Gaurav.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Panchatattva Prabhu Yogananda. Hare Krishna.
Jai, Haribol.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Who's there? Off my screen. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. Please share those class links with your friends, and we look forward to seeing you all again on Wednesday for Srimad Bhagavatam class with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj ki jai.
Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Thank you to Meena and Haridas Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you to all. Hare Krishna.